Well, it's so good to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out for the show. You have any questions before we get in?
Let's get to it, Joe.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. So, first and foremost, I want to begin our journey into your world and your book and your life by asking you this. When we look at the calendar now in mid March, and 6 years ago, the world was changing with COVID. How did you get through that coronavirus era, and how has it changed the way that you do things and live today?
So it changed dramatically for my kids. I have four bonus daughters. My fiance at the time was living in West Palm. I'm in Dallas, Texas. I have two boys. One was working and one was in college. And my initial thought when I heard about it and we figured out what was going on, I was in Florida with the girls and my fiance, and I said, we have to get back to Texas. There has to be a way. My biggest concern was we need to all be together, and I wasn't sure what that looked like. But I knew we all needed to be in Dallas because this is where my boys were. They couldn't get to Florida. So these girls and I, I'm a bonus mom, so I didn't grow up raising girls. Very dramatic. I said, we're getting on an airplane and we are going to Dallas. Well, you would have thought that we had just dropped a bomb because they were like, we can't get up. I remember, Joe, we were the only people on the flight. It was creepy. It was eerie. The girls thought I was out of my mind. We had the mask on, the whole nine yards, but it was surreal. But in my mind, what I knew is that we all needed to be together. So that's what happened. For 6 weeks, I was cooking dinner. We were having family dinners. I have one bonus daughter that's a vegan. So, okay. But I accommodated everything. Everybody was in this house. They were doing remote learning. Here we were. And my fiance, who's now my husband, he looked at me after about the fifth week and he goes, Rachel, he goes, you're making yourself crazy. Because I was like, okay, dinner's on the table. We're gonna da 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 da. And of course, getting to the grocery store. I was going out. I was living. My sister would call me and say, where are you? I'm like, oh, I'm at the grocery store. She's like, what? What? You're out? I'm like, yeah, I'm a fresh air and sunshine kind of girl. So I didn't when you ask how it changed me, it didn't. I was just still living my life,
Yeah.
but watching everybody else make these accommodations. And it wasn't like I wasn't unaware, but I was determined that I was going to try and keep some sense of normalcy. But finally, Kevin looked at me and he said, Rachel, I'm going to take the girls. I'm going back to Florida. We don't have to live like this. This is making you crazy. And you know what? It's okay. After 6 weeks, he realizes his girls are just going to be the way they are. And that was that. So, I think for all of the girls handled it differently. Both of my boys handled it differently. My one son was at college, and I really do think that it affected him much more than I thought it did. The complete to go to college, go to class, have your first year, all of that in there, and then your second year you were confined to the computer. I think there was well, we know, right? Surveys
Yeah.
are showing us there was some damage done there. So for me personally, I was like, we are going to forge ahead. And I made many flights by myself from Florida to Dallas. Of course, those are two of the states that were probably the most lenient,
Yeah.
I should say, in how they dealt with things. They didn't shut everything down. But I will tell you, seeing the airport with no one in it, it's something else.
Yeah.
So that was how I dealt. That was how I dealt with that time. And I have a brother who's in Australia. He would call me and go, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I- you know, I'm out. I'm doing my life the way that I was going to do it. And so I have no regrets. But my family, I wanted them to be together. And what I realized, Joe, is we can only be together for so long, right? I think
Yeah.
that's all family. So
Yeah.
there you go.
I love it. Great story. Yeah, I'm in jazz radio, so I interviewed a lot of musicians, and I remember one musician at one point, I think it was in August of 2020. He had an apartment by Times Square, and he said there is no one here. And it just felt like a Twilight Zone episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're not meant to live in isolation.
No.
We're just meant to. And now that we know what we know now, right? I think there are a lot of people that would do it, that might do it differently.
Yep.
And and these girls, though, I will tell you, they were paranoid and petrified. And you just can't operate in fear and faith at the same time. And I chose the faith route.
Yeah.
I just with it, with a healthy dose of awareness thrown in.
Well, and the problem with kids and what we're seeing now is that we had all this mileage on our odometer. We dealt with a world that had no pandemic. This was their reality and their emotional fragility. They just didn't have enough time. And being separated from all these emotive and social outlets was just horrible. But this is the thing that I think about in retrospect. We were told from the word go that likely every single person's going to get COVID at some point, right? So the
Yes,
level, and I think even in Sweden, they just let everything open because herd immunity was going to take over. So that
exactly.
kind of mentality, it's like it's got to run its course. And I remember after we sanctified and sanitized ourselves so much, that
Oh,
following, I think in 22 or 23, that flu season and cold season in the fall and winter was epic because everybody was indoors. Nobody was swapping all of these very minor viral strands. You know what I'm saying? It was wild, you know?
it was. And once again, we're not meant to live like that. It took a toll on all of us mentally, a lot of people physically, and we are still seeing the ramifications of that. And I still have one of my bonus daughters. One mask is not enough. Two, she'll go three. And every time something we hear about something, we're masking up. And I think what I did learn is that I needed to tolerate other people's points of view. I didn't have to agree with it, but I really do this younger generation I have a real concern for because you're right. This is their world. This was a very real part of their experience, and you're right. They didn't have the bandwidth, and I don't know that they still do,
Yeah.
to cope with. They don't have the coping skills to go through some of these things, and the critical thinking, Joe. I think that's a piece that has been is being lost,
Yeah.
even for some of us that are older too.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into the work that you do today with your book and speaking and everything that's going on. I'm going to put you in front of 13-year-olds. It's career day, and one of the kids wants to know what you do for a living. How do you explain what you do?
I give people encouragement and hope through sharing my life story in my speaking and my writing. Before I had this career, I was in marketing and communications and had my own company for many years. And so I think that it's important to examine all of the options that are given to you. And the sooner that you can try out things and explore them, the better off you are. But what I want to do today is just help people who are going through a difficult challenge and remind them that through faith they can get through just about anything. And we've all been gifted with a supernatural superpower inside of us, and sometimes we forget that. And that's what I'm doing through my books and through my speaking.
So, what did you want to be when you were 12 or 13 years old? What was your dream life?
I wanted to be Barbara Walters. I
Okay.
wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be on TV. I wanted to be reporting the news. Most people won't know who Barbara Walters is now,
I
right, Joe?
know. That's weird, isn't it? So, where were you born and raised? Where are you from?
I was born on the base in Pensacola, Florida. My dad graduated second class from the U.S. Air Force Academy. At that point, they could choose what branch of the military they wanted to be in. He chose the Marines. So he flew choppers for the Marine Corps, which is why I was born on the base in Pensacola. And then consequently, he served his time and then finished graduate school in Pennsylvania. And we moved back to Mississippi, which was his hometown. My mom is immigrated from, she was born in Kiev Kiev. Her father was taken prisoner during the war. Her grandmother was killed in an explosion, and she was processed through a displaced persons camp and lived in Germany for 14 years before she was sponsored by a family. Her family was sponsored and settled outside of Tupelo, Mississippi. They picked cotton to pay off their passage. She graduated high school, barely knew English, put herself in secretarial school, and then consequently met my father.
So what were the seeds that were planted in you early on for this level of resilience and success and finding your way of helping inspiring people through your story of what you've been through?
Well, I think my mom, number one, I don't think I gave her enough credit until I got older about what she actually went through and what I learned from her. She came to this country and was so thankful to be here. I mean, after everything that she had gone through, and she tells us stories about being in the camp and, the soldiers bringing shoe boxes and for Christmas and a piece of chocolate, what that meant to her. I think between the two of them, my parents grew up very different, very, very differently. And they had very different religions that they followed. Yet, what they both did very well is that they put the word in us, they put faith in us, they put fortitude in us. My dad comes from an entrepreneurial family, they own their own business. I watched him build that business. Me and my brothers and sisters worked in that business until it was sold. He's now in Australia with one of my brothers. They've built a business over there in the last 30 years. So I think it's we see we this behavior was modeled for me. My dad being a military man, you persevere. My mom having experienced what she went through, perseverance is part of it. I will tell you though that once this diagnosis for my husband was made real, my relationship, well, I will tell you, my faith changed in that. I went from just knowing about religion and religious practices to having a real relationship with Jesus, and that really much changed for me a lot of things.
So let me ask you this. Who's been that hero, that inspirational force consistently in your life that's allowed you to go through the highs and the lows and to find yourself at a point where you are inspiring people with your message?
Well, it would be my parents
Yeah.
because they're still there. My dad just celebrated his 88th birthday yesterday. They live in Melbourne, Australia. Their belief in me is still prevails today, Joe. And they don't even know, they're not even sure what I'm doing, but they're like, we're praying for you every day, Rachel. We just hope you have the right words and you're with the right people. And they know they were with me with my husband's diagnosis and his death. They have never lost a child. They came close. But I will tell you that I mean, my dad they left America when they were in their 50s to start a new business in a new country. Who does that? And that was over 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So I've just always been exposed to this, Joe. So I guess part of it is I don't know anything different. I started my own business at 23. They were like, go for it. So I opened an advertising and marketing business here in Dallas. I didn't I didn't stop to think about all the things that could go wrong. I'm just like, all right, I'll do this.
Yeah.
And so it really does it really does make a difference who raises us, how we're raised, and those five people that we keep close to us, right? Because we are the center of the five people that we surround ourselves with. And it sounds trite, but my mom and dad, I still am amazed at what they're doing and how they're doing it, and their belief in me still.
So when you decided to write this book, you got to go back into some into some hard periods of your life.
Yes.
What was the decision to write the book, and what was it like to go through that journey? Now that you've been through it, was it cathartic? Was it necessary? Were there revelatory moments that you had by going through this journey and actually seeing it in pulp?
I always knew, even while I was living through this story, I knew that God had given me this story for a bigger purpose. I will tell you that John's been gone for almost 15 years. It'll be 15 years in September. I immediately thought after he passed that I was going to build my platform, write my book, and I was going to go away. I was going to do that. Well, my oldest son went down the road of addiction. And what I didn't know was that my boys carried with them for the first couple of years a real fear of losing their other parent. So, we all have our own plans, and God has sometimes a way of saying, wait a second, that may be a dream deferred. He needed me to write the rest of the story, which is what I'm working on book 2 now. But for me, I always knew, because I didn't know anybody else who'd gone through this. I didn't know anybody else who had ALS. I didn't know anybody else who was widowed at 49, who became a single parent raising two teenage boys at 10 and 14. I didn't know who, and I couldn't find them, Joe. Now today, with social media and the proliferation of everything that we have here, you can find somebody in less than 5 seconds who can walk through this specific walk with you. But for me, I think the biggest impetus was that I really wanted people to understand and to know that regardless if the happily ever after doesn't work out the way you thought it would, you can still live a life hopefully ever after, and still even more abundantly than you ever thought possible.
So there's a lot of people that are picking up your book that are getting inspired and it's changing the way they see their lives and the world. Who has that been for you? Who has been that inspiration that maybe is alive today that you would love to meet and talk to and have a minute with? Is there anyone like that for you?
Wow. That is a great question, because there are so many people that I at one time thought I would love to meet. What I've realized, I think, is that we're all just normal people. And when you get down to it, whether it's fame or fortune, or I think that if there was somebody I would want to meet, probably somebody from the South, probably maybe John Grisham, the
Okay.
writer, who has written so prolifically and who is from the South, and who I've always enjoyed reading his books, and who has done so much with his foundation. He is probably somebody, and who just released a book called The Widow. So I think John would probably be one of the people that I would like to meet. Um, I think now, because we have access to people through social media, we feel like we know a lot of them already, right? I mean, everybody's sharing everything. I don't know if that's all good, but
Yeah.
it's much easier to kind of have those people feel familiar, even though you've never really met them, right?
Yeah, for sure. So as an entrepreneur, as a successful businesswoman, who have you looked up to in the business world? Who do you think does it right from the top down? The way they run their business to the product they deliver for people to come back to, their employees are happy. Is there anyone out there that you've looked at as a template?
Mm.
Huh.
You know, Nordstrom had it right.
Yeah.
Nordstrom had it right for so long. Everything about the experience, everything about the personnel, everything about the store, the merchandise, and yet, what are we seeing, Joe? We're seeing some of these people that we grew up with, these outstanding retailers, and so on and so forth. That they're closing their store. We just got a notice here in Dallas that our store in the Galleria will be closing. And I think that we were able to experience some wonderful companies that were doing terrific things. And I think that's just getting more difficult, given how the culture and the move towards technology has become what it is. But I will tell you, still one of my favorite things to do when I am at a restaurant and I'm having a great service experience. And I always ask the server, tell me who you are, and how your day has been. They've given us a great experience. I'll say, will you call the manager over? And they get this look like, what did I do wrong? I have the manager comes over, and I go, I just have to tell you, Bob has done a great job with us today. And I know that that's because of you,
Yeah.
because it starts from the top down. So I just want you to know you have done a great job with him. And I just wanted to thank you and compliment you. And Joe, people don't know what to do. My family used to be very embarrassed like, uh-oh, what's mom going to do? And now that they know what's coming, but I will tell you, we're so keen to let people know when they mess up, but
Uh-huh.
we just hesitate to let them know when they are doing such a good job. And I love being able to go a level higher and compliment their manager, who is the one that is behind the scenes making it all happen.
I think that's great. I think about that a lot when I'm out. There was a young kid that was at a Home Depot I saw a few weeks ago, and he's just the kid at the paint counter, and he's filled me a couple buckets, and I just went over and I said, "Hey, what do you want to do with your life?" And he said, "I'm in college and I'm going to get into cybersecurity." And I said, "I like your style. I like what you're doing." I said, "You're just get out there and change the world." And he was just like, "Man, thank you." And that was it. Just those little moments because we are so like ready to either criticize or crucify. It's such a part of our culture, you know? But we need to build each other up and give us those little moments because those are the things that everybody will remember even after the lights go off. It's like,
You're- yes,
uh,
and kindness doesn't cost anything, does
no,
it?
no,
Not
it's
at
huge.
all.
It's
Yes,
absolutely huge. So,
yes.
what was it like when you finally got your book and you saw it and the box came in the mail and you held it in your hands and it was this completion of a journey? What was that feeling like?
Oh, I was so relieved. It was like, wow, it's here. It's done. And reading it, of course, I think the hardest part of writing a book is the editing. And
Oh
anyone
yeah.
who's written, yeah, the editing can go on forever. And at some point you just have to say, print,
Yeah.
and live with that. So what for me, seeing and at my book launch, having people there that knew John, having people there that are in the book, that there are stories about, I think that for me was so gratifying. And also part of this, Joe, was like getting the story down for my boys because they were so young and knowing some of the backstories. And I think this is one of the things that I would just be so I would love for more people to get the stories of their own family written down
Yeah.
somewhere because
Yeah.
that is treasure there, and our memories will fade and they will not, we'll get things confused. And so even if you can have a parent or a grandparent or somebody speak into your phone and just record it and transcribe it later, there's gold there, and it's part of who you are. And I think that for me, that was one of the most gratifying parts of this experience.
So my father passed relatively young. He was 64 in 2008. And
Oh,
we
sorry.
were, and I'm the kind of guy, as you probably have known, that with podcasting, where I love collecting memories, whether it's pictures or any of those things, to preserve them, to scan them, to have them. So I'm looking through his side table, and I see these three little micro cassette tapes from like the 80s and 90s that we used to record on. And I'm like,
Yeah.
they're not marked. I'm like, what are they? I pop them in. My dad left his life story behind.
What a
I
gift.
know, and he got spooked by someone that died that he knew pretty well. So he was like, "I'm going to put this down on tape," and he did. And I digitized it, and there was all these things that I had no idea about. So it's those things, and I believe more and more as I get older that like even at funeral homes,
Yes,
offer some level of service to like archive the stories
I
because
agree.
everybody wants that. That's the reason why we're here. Half of the reason why we're here is to etch this story that hopefully becomes some level of legacy, whether to our family or the outside world.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And so I'm curious, did your mom hear these? Did she know a lot of this information as
I
well?
yeah, I think there was some nuggets in there that were very revelatory for everybody. I think everybody had their moment, and I put it out there, and his sister I think didn't realize things. Like there was one story because his great grandparents came here from Italy, and they didn't
Yes.
have a lot of money, so he had this one story where his grandma would cut a yam in half and put it in the oven, and it would come out all hot, and she'd put sugar on top, and he said that was the best memory in the world. And I don't think his sister realized that. So those tiny little minute details that seem small are meteoric, you know?
They are. They
So
are. And how that's wonderful.
it's fun.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Speaking of stories and archival things in our lives, if you were to have a dream tonight, you ran into the 18-year-old version of you and you walked in right now at your age and you hit
Mm.
play on a movie projector and a 60-second highlight reel of your life flashed up on a wall, would that young version believe that your life turned out this way?
I think my young version would have said, am I really going to have to go through all that? Am I really going to have to go through all that? I will. But wow, I think, and that's one of the gifts I think that we get, right? Is that we can look back on our life and see what's happened, but looking forward, there are things that change in our lives every day. And if you had told me that I was going to end up with somebody with ALS, that I had no idea what that was. Lou Gehrig's disease, I had no idea who Lou Gehrig was. I would have said, really? And so, but once again, as we started this conversation, Joe, I was fortified in a way that went deep, really, really deep. And I think too, one of the other gifts that I've been given is the ability, I love input. I love input. It's one of my strengths. But at some point, you have to make a decision whether you have all the information. You could dig for information forever. And at some point, you have to go with what you know. You have to go with that intuition, that spirit that's inside of you going, okay, you've got to do this. But my 18-year-old Rachel would have said, you know what? It's still going to be a good life. And none of us get out of it without having to go through something. And so I think I hate it more. I hate it more for my boys
Yeah.
because I don't think, any child should have to lose a parent or go through that kind of trauma. So, um, for me, okay, but for them, a bigger loss.
So you've inspired a an answer to a question that I ask, and I typically do it at the very end, but I'm going to leapfrog right now because you talked about ALS. If you could get into a time machine and go back in the annals of human history and see one event with your own eyes, what would you love to have seen? And it won't create a weird Back to the Future tear in time. You just get to see it and you get to come back.
Mm. Oh, just get to see it. I think for me, and I did get to, it would be, I think it would be going back and seeing what the world was like when Jesus was around.
Yeah.
I think seeing him deliver messages. I've been to the Holy Land and it's amazing, but to be there when he was there with all of the drama of everyday life and seeing the political environment. I think there's so much of it that we tend to forget. That would be to just go back there and just feel it and see it and meet some of these people and then come back. I'd be like, whoa. That would be pretty powerful. But so that would be my answer for that one.
So mine would probably be a few things, but you just what you were saying about Lou Gehrig, I would love to have been there in the crowd when he said, "I'm the luckiest man on the." To hear that speech
I
in
know.
real time would have been absolutely stellar.
I know. And here's the thing that most people don't realize, he was such a good person.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
he was.
his whole life was just stellar, but you're right. And I think the reason I didn't mention that is because we see it on film, right?
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
lives on in film forever. But what a guy, what an amazing life and legacy. It's so, I hate the fact that such a good man is associated with such a terrible, brutal disease that
Absolutely.
we're still no closer, Joe, to figuring out what causes it or how to cure it.
So let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, everyone that gets your book, everyone that's known you in a business sense, all these bubbles of people, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
It's interesting because at 23, I would have said one thing, at 43, maybe something else. And at 63, I will tell you that at the core, I'm still the same person I ever was. I'm fairly driven. I think I'm somewhat competent. I'm personable. And yet I also have a drive. And yet, I will also tell you too, Joe, I would have never in my whole life, and I had a great marriage with my first husband. We were together for 24 years. I would have never thought, it never entered my mind that I would now be in a place where I married a widower. He lost his wife 6 months after my husband died. We dated 10 years long distance so we could get these kids up and grown. I would have never thought that I would be in this place in my life at this particular time. But I am so grateful, and that is the gratitude is part of my life. I think that's was instilled in me at a very early age, and it is still a core principle of who I am and how I live.
So, Rachel, if anyone wants to get a copy of The Widow Chose Red, they want to reach out, they want and all of the good work that you're doing, where do they go?
Yes. They go to Amazon or Audible. I recorded the book. It's about 5.5 hours long. Or you can connect with me at spiritedprosperity.com or Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram. I'm all over the place and would love to know how I might be able to support you in some way.
Wonderful. I will put all these links in the show notes. Rachel, what a joy. Thank you for your story. Thank you for a wonderful story that I think is going to just absolutely ripple through so many people. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, Joe, thank you and Godspeed.
Yes, sir.